everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews presented by Quantum Podcast. As always, I will be your host, Chris, and this is, of course, the show about all things movies and TV. But we continue our Marvel Friday marathon with Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, starting with WandaVision, the first show to hit Disney Plus from Marvel. This was a big step, I guess, forward, if you want to look at it that way. Some people saw it as a step back for Disney, but this was like one of the first shows on Disney Plus. I think Mandalorian, if I remember right, was the actual first show to stream on Disney Plus, but this was, of course, the first Marvel show to be shown on Disney Plus. And now we've gotten a handful of them, probably 15, I think, shows, or maybe more than that, from Marvel alone. And then, of course, all the Star Wars shows and everything else that we've gotten since. But this was a big change for what Disney has done in the past, where all their projects was released in theaters or shown on like Disney Channel and Disney XD and things like that. When Disney Plus, the app, became a thing, this was huge. They started throwing a lot of their projects into the app instead of releasing it on TV networks or the theaters. So, but WandaVision was the first Marvel show, and I really enjoy it. I still do. Watching this again for the podcast, it's probably been a good, I don't know, 3 or 4 years since I've seen any of the episodes from WandaVision. So it was really cool to go back and see how I feel about this show, because when it came out back in, what was it, 2001 or 2021, sorry, it blew my mind. This was a great, an episode a week type show. My sister and I love watching it every week, trying to theorize what Wanda was going to do in this episode. Which show were they going to pay homage to in this episode? So it was a really good week-to-week show, just like The Mandalorian was. Now, of course, some of these Marvel shows could have easily been 2-hour movies. They didn't really need 6 to 8 episodes to tell the story. They could have just did it in 2 hours. But shows like WandaVision and Hawkeye and Daredevil really benefit from the week-to-week format of this show, and we'll get into that more when we get into the breakdown today for the feature series. But this show blew my mind. I absolutely love it, and I still love it even today as I talk about it. So, but before we get into WandaVision, we're going to do something that we haven't done in a while on the show for news and reactions. We're going to do a now streaming blitz, where we're going to pick a show from 5 of the major streaming services, and we're going to react to those shows. And then I think 2 movies as well. So we'll get into that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Some of these are a couple of shows that I've been meaning to talk about on the podcast, but just haven't had a time to do it. So we're going to finally talk about those. And then a couple of movies that came out as well. One movie in particular, I think, came out last week that I watched. So we'll talk about that as well. Before we get into that, though, a couple reminders. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com/the Cinematic Reviews. You can also listen to the audio version if that's what you prefer on your favorite podcast network, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of them. Also, follow the show on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. Post all the artwork and shorts and everything like that, as well as any breaking news coming from Hollywood as well. Also, check out the website, cinematic/reviews.com. Been working on that for a while. The app has been put on the back burner, but we do have the official podcast website up and running. So check that out. You can set up a profile, show everybody your favorite movies, favorite franchises, favorite genres, favorite actors. You can also rate movies using the popcorn rating that I use on the show every episode. So it's a lot of interactive stuff. You can look at what everybody else, how they reviewed a movie, what they rated it. There's also some trivia games on there you can play. So it's very interactive. This thing's going to grow and grow and grow more as I come up with more ideas for people to explore on here. So check out the website as well. So with that, let's head over to news and reactions for the now streaming blitz today. So since WandaVision is a very TV show based series to pay homage to all the great shows that we've had over the last few decades, I thought, why not do a now streaming blitz with our newest version of what we call television cable is streaming services, which seems to be taking over cable. So first up, we've got Ted season 2 on Peacock. Uh, this, of course, is in the Ted universe created by Seth MacFarlane, who voices Ted again in the show. If you remember the movies, Mark Wahlberg plays Johnny Bennett in there. He has been recast, of course. This is back in the 80s by Max Burkholder, who plays John Bennett in the TV series. I love this show. I love this universe. I remember when the first Ted movie came out, it was one of my favorite Mark Wahlberg movies. It was one of my favorite things that Seth MacFarlane did. MacFarlane, of course, created Family Guy and American Dad and has starred in a bunch of other movies and shows over the years, using his voice as his skill set. He lends his voice again as Ted in the TV series like he did in the movies with Mark Wahlberg. But this show is very, very funny. Definitely season 2 was freaking hilarious. The one scene that I remember the most is probably when John's dad, Matty, picks up Ted and throws him like a football at John and hits him off his bike. And then John's cousin Blair comes out and picks up Ted, starts beating John with Ted. And it was one of the most hilarious scenes that I've seen in this universe and on show, period. It was so much fun, so hilarious. I love the cast in this show. I love the humor that gets put in there. I love that it's in this universe that Seth MacFarlane is trying to grow. There's talks that season 3 will be a thing. I mean, Mark Wahlberg's been in talks of even doing a Ted 3, but instead of doing a third movie, they decided to do this series back in 2024. We've only had 2 seasons so far, but we'll see if season 3 is a go. But I really, really like this show. It's hilarious, especially if you're a fan of the Ted movies. You're going to probably really, really love the Ted series, specifically season 2. I think season 2 has a lot of great humor in it, and it expands the world even more, and you get to see the relationship between John and Ted grow as they go through middle school and high school. So with the popcorn rating, I'm getting Ted season 2 4 popcorn buckets on that scale. So you can check that out on the website of how I rated it. I'll add in my rankings for the Ted movies, which we've done on the podcast back when we were doing the mini franchise episodes. If you remember those, like we did Kingsman, we did Kill Bill, Ted was one of them. But the series I'll add on there as well, so you can see all the popcorn ratings for them and how they differ from each other. So next up, we've got The Beauty season 1, which is streaming on Hulu. Technically, I think it is a FX show, but FX is kind of just combined with Hulu. So we'll just say that it's a Hulu series. This stars Evan Peters, Ashton Kutcher. This is a lot like the movie The Substance, if you remember seeing that one with Demi Moore and Dennis Quaid, where they have that wonder drug, and you have to do all these steps, and you get this kit every, 8 or 7 days. And you had to pick up this kit and do all this recipes and things like that to stay healthy. This is kind of in the same realm of that. It's a little bit different, though. It's got a wonder drug created or discovered by Ashton Kutcher's character, who is also Vincent D'Onofrio's character. Ashton Kutcher is the beauty version of Vincent D'Onofrio, which was pretty cool. But this drug, you take this drug, you go into this like cocoon-like thing, and you burst out of this, and you are younger, you're beautiful, and it's just you live forever pretty much. It's this wonder drug similar to The Substance, like I said in that movie, but with a little bit different. With The Substance, Demi Moore had a different version of herself in a way come out of the body, whereas this completely transforms the body into like this whatever you call it. It's very similar to caterpillars turning into a butterfly, metamorphosis. That's the word I was thinking of, where they go into this cocoon and then they come out as a butterfly. This is essentially where they got the idea. Now, there's a couple different ways people get infected, through sex, through actually getting injected by this drug. A lot of people in here seem to be spreading it sexually, whereas what seems to be causing issues with people exploding and things like that, where if they actually take the drug directly, the serum into their veins from a syringe, seems to last longer, I guess, or hold off the side effects of exploding and rashes and things like that. But it's a pretty crazy show. It's very sci-fi. It's almost alien-like by the way the cast transforms into their beauty selves and goes into those cocoons and things like that. But it's a pretty intense show. The only negative I could give the show was that it kind of left on a weird cliffhanger to where they didn't really need a cliffhanger. They could have just ended this main story of going up against Ashton Kutcher, but it kind of just stops in a weird spot. And it was kind of confusing. Like, I had to like double and triple check to make sure that there wasn't another episode coming out, because the way that they cut this first season off was so weird and sudden. But it sounds like they're going to be getting a second season here shortly, maybe next year. They got to film it, of course, but it's a pretty interesting show. I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm excited to see how this world expands. On the popcorn rating, I'm giving it 4 popcorn buckets, so pretty solid rating there. So check out The Beauty season 1 on Hulu today. Next, we'll switch over to Netflix for one of our first movies today. War Machine, starring Alan Ritchson. Now, War Machine is a film that I was very excited about when I saw the trailers come out on Netflix. Like I said, Alan Ritchson stars in here, along with some other people like Blake Richardson, Stephen James, Dennis Quaid's in this one. Isa Morales, who has made quite a name for himself. And then Jai Courtney, of course, who is pretty well known as well. But the main focus is Alan Ritchson, who has, like I said, made quite a name for himself. Of course, playing Thad in Blue Mountain State. He's been playing Reacher on the Reacher show on Amazon. Now he's been doing a bunch of other projects, like he was in Fast and Furious. He did a couple of Amazon films as well. So now he's hopped over to Netflix. But War Machine is about this like elite of the elite special ops group that have been, going through this very brutal boot camp where they're trying to find who is the best in the world to join this elite special ops group. And then they stumble across this mysterious force in the woods that turns out to be this alien machine that is unkillable until Alan Richardson is able to outsmart it and destroy it by the end of it. But it's really cool. It's kind of like broken in half. Like the first part of the movie is a very like Full Metal Jacket like movie. Well, then the second half turns into like War of the Worlds, which was in a very interesting like movie mashup. But that's like the simplest way I can describe this movie. It's kind of 2 movies in one, which makes it very exciting and appealing to a lot of people, including myself, where I really love alien movies and I also like war movies like Full Metal Jacket, Jarhead, things like that. But I also like movies like War of the Worlds, Independence Day, things. So this is kind of like a cool mashup of those 2 different genres, which was pretty cool. So check out War Machine today on Netflix. Looking at the popcorn scale here before we move on. Let me pull it up here. I am giving it... Wow, I lost my notes. Let me try to find it here. Where is it? I think I gave it 4 popcorn buckets. Nope, I gave it 3. So not as high as I thought I did, but I still really enjoyed it, even though 3 might sound a little low. I know some people probably would give it like a 4 or 5. But I think I still wanted more out of this. There's more that could be added on. I think there's talks about doing a sequel because of the way it ended. It seems like this is going around the world and they were one of the first people to destroy this thing. So they could do a sequel, but even though I really enjoyed it, still going to give it 3 popcorn buckets. It didn't like blow my mind, but it was a really interesting, mashup between, an alien invasion movie and a military movie like Jarhead or Full Metal Jacket with the boot camp version. So check out War Machine today on Netflix. Hopping over to Apple, we've got one of Apple's most popular shows next to probably Severance, but this one is Shrinking. Season 3 is what we're going to talk about. Shrinking, I absolutely love Shrinking, and I can't believe I haven't really talked about Shrinking on this podcast. So here we go. This is the first time I'll be talking about the show. I really love it. It's got Jason Segel played as Jimmy, Jessica Williams as Gabby, and they have Harrison Ford as Paul. They're three colleagues who are therapists, and they have their own practice, their own facility. That it seems like Paul is like the main owner of the building, and he is now handing it off to Gabby at the end of this series. But they kind of all work interchangeably together. They're all colleagues, they're all friends. They swap, different techniques and advice and things like that, both in their work life and their personal life. But it's a very, very charming and very funny show. Uh, they have all sorts of different characters like Sean, Brian, Alice, who is Jimmy's daughter. You have Liz, Derek, Summer, Charlie, Dr. Julie, who ends up marrying Harrison Ford's character. Like, it's a really, really nice, uh, charming show that has a lot of humor and a lot of life lessons in it too, especially around family. Jimmy, Jason Segel's character, is very much dealing with the loss of his wife in a tragic car accident, as well as his daughter Alice, who's dealing with it. And everybody is kind of dealing with it too, because they're all friends. They all knew his wife. I'm drawing a blank on his wife's name. I feel so bad. Tia. Tia was his wife's name, and so that was a very dramatic event that really just sent Jason Segel's character into a pit of grief, and neglecting his daughter, which that's where the Liz character comes in, their neighbor who watches her while her dad's just a drunken mess. But he eventually calls out of that pit. He starts dating. He's doing well, especially when he meets Sean. But then Sean ends up moving over to Paul's practice just because Jimmy and Sean get way too close. But it's a very, very charming movie, I think, or show. That's the best term I can give it. Looking at the breakdown, I know we're really talking about season 3, but we've never talked about the show, so I'm going to give the breakdown of the popcorn scale, but it's going to be really easy. For the popcorn rating for each season, it's 5 popcorn buckets. I thought about going the golden popcorn bucket on this one, but I couldn't quite get there. Like I keep saying with the rating, the gold tier I want to keep that as special as possible, very rare. I don't want to just hand it out willy-nilly, because then what's the point? But this is like as close as you're going to get without getting to the golden tier on the popcorn rating. But 5 popcorn buckets, I think, is the perfect rating here for it. It's got charm, it's got humor, it's got life lessons. It's a great family show. Well, not really like having kids, because there's a lot of adult language and things like that in here. But as like if your older siblings and your parents are watching this together, it's a really good show to watch as a family, adult family, I should say. But it is TVMA, and there's a lot of sexual references and things like that in here that probably don't want your children listening to, depending on their age. But it's a charming show, so definitely check it out on Apple Plus if you haven't. Jason Segel and Harrison Ford are fantastic, especially Harrison Ford. Eventually he gets diagnosed with Parkinson's, so then he has to deal with that, and he does a very well job at performing the Parkinson's part of it. It's a very, very incredible show. One of my favorites within the last few years. So check out Shrinking today on Apple Plus. The last one we will do today, we're going to hop over to Prime Video or Amazon Prime, whatever you prefer calling it, with Balls Up, one of the newest movies to hit streaming services. And this one was pretty disappointing. I honestly don't know what the hell I was watching. I've mentioned it a bunch of times on the podcast. Mark Wahlberg is one of my favorite actors of all time. I'm starting to really like Paul Walter Hauser. So when I saw that these two were in a comedy together, I was like, hell yes, sign me up. I'm going to watch this. And then it started, and I was like, what the fuck did I just turn on? The first scene of the movie is them presenting this wonder condom that not only covers the shaft, as they say, but covers the balls. Hence, Balls Up is what they call it. For those of you that don't know, Mark Wahlberg is a very devout Catholic. And he has said numerous times that he is really big on his faith and things like that. Now I get it. This is a movie. Things that are talked about in this movie, are everyday life experiences. But this seems like a movie that Mark Wahlberg wouldn't normally do unless he needed a payday, which it sounds like he got paid quite a bit to do this movie. He's got a contract with Amazon Prime because he's been doing it a bunch of different projects for them. Same thing with Netflix. He had a big contract with Netflix a few years ago where he did a bunch of movies as well. But this movie, I don't know what the hell it is. I mean, there's parts of it that are funny, but this has got to be one of the worst movies I've seen so far this year. And it sucks because it's got a cast that I like Benjamin Bratt's in here as Santos, and I really like him. Now, I'm not a Sacha Baron Cohen guy. I mean, Borat was hilarious back when it came out, but I just haven't been a big Sasha Cohen guy, and maybe I'm a little biased with how I rate this movie today because of that he's in here. But it's just he's an actor that I just never really responded to, never really thought was that funny, except for maybe Borat. But Borat was kind of a phenomenon when that came out. We never really seen anything like it. And once you watch it today, you're kind of like, this is pretty fucking stupid. And that's how I felt about Balls Up, where sure, there's parts of it that are funny, but most of the time I caught myself going like, what the fuck am I watching right now? And what the hell did they do to my boy Mark Wahlberg to where he had to do a movie like this, which is just ridiculous. The best part in this movie, and you've probably seen it a lot on Instagram and TikTok lately, is Mark Wahlberg and Paul Walter Hauser singing at the party that Sasha Cohen hosts. Somebody that I used to know is a song that they perform, and it's one of the funniest freaking things that I've ever seen, and that's probably the best part in the movie. Other than that, you take that part out, and I'm turning this off midway through. Like, it took me 2 days to watch this movie because I needed to kind of reassess things and digest it and be like, what the hell did I just watch? Eventually I did finish it, and it kind of got worse as it went on. Unfortunately, but that singing scene that you've probably seen on social media with Mark Wahlberg starting out with somebody I used to know with the high-pitched voice, and then Paul Walter Hauser coming in too with the second voice in a high-pitched voice as well, is one of the funniest freaking things ever. And you see Sasha Baron Cohen's reaction to his character, Pavio Kuto, who is just amazed that these two have beautiful singing voices. And they do in a way, but it was so high-pitched that it was so hilarious. And it's amazing how they were able to stay serious during that scene. Like, I would need like 100 takes to be able to do that if I heard somebody like Paul Walter Hauser singing with a high-pitched voice right next to me, and I'm supposed to stand there with a straight face like Mark Wahlberg did. They had to have had to do that like 100 times to get that right, because there's no way that they weren't laughing their asses off while listening to their voices when they sung. But it's hilarious. But I mean, you get ridiculous scenes like them stuffing cocaine-filled condoms down their throats to prove themselves. You have the whole soccer subline where they sabotage the World Cup and they're beating this wiener-looking mascot from Brazil. And it's a bad movie all around, except for that one scene with the music. I'm giving this one popcorn bucket, which hurts my heart because, like I said, I like Mark Wahlberg. I like Paul Walter Hauser. It's just this movie was just awful. Right now, it's probably the worst movie I've seen this year. And I'm giving it the lowest tier possible on the popcorn rating at one popcorn bucket. So if you are curious, definitely check out Balls Up on Prime Video. Maybe my review here convinced you to be just a little bit curious on how bad this movie is. I honestly only watched it because of the two actors that are in there. If it was any other actors, I wouldn't have given this movie the light of day. But with it being Mark Wahlberg and Paul Walter Hauser, I was like, let's give it a try. Maybe this could be a fun experience. And it wasn't. I just caught myself saying, what the hell am I watching through most of this movie? So if you dare, check out Balls Up on Prime Video today. So that's going to do it for today's news and reaction. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll get into our featured series of the day, WandaVision. This episode is brought to you by W Energy. Still drinking energy that quits before you do? Stop crashing, stop shaking, and start performing. Meet W Energy, clean energy made for gamers, creators, and anyone who refuses to slow down. With zero sugar, no jitters, and no crash, W keeps you locked in whether you're grinding ranked, streaming for hours, or pushing through those late nights. There's no crash, no fade, just gas. Drink different, perform better. Grab W Energy and use code Cinematic10 to get 10% off your order today.
Heavenly shades of night are falling. It's twilight time.
Wanda and Vision, aren't we a five-pair?
This is our home now. I want us to fit in.
Oh, this is gonna be a gas!
Where did you two move from? How long have you been married? And why don't you have children yet?
Our story.
I think what my wife means to say is that we moved from...
Moved from where? Married when? Damn it, why?
Oh, Arthur, stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
Deep in the dark, your kiss will thrill
Is this really happening?
like days of old, lighting the spark of love that fills me with rings of hope.
Am I dead?
No. Why would you think that?
Because you are.
Each day I pray for evening just to be.
We are an unusual couple, you know.
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
So WandaVision came out back in January 15th, 2021, a couple days before my birthday. It was week to week, which is something that they talked about a lot when they were making the show. Like, do they release all 9 episodes at once like Netflix does? Do they do the week to week like cable television does? They ultimately decided to do it week to week, and I think it came to the benefit of the show because you had all the theories online, all the fan groups and the Reddits and all that, just trying to figure out what they were going to do in the next episode. What did this mean in this episode? What did that mean? Mephisto theories were the biggest one to come out of here because people were convinced that Mephisto was the villain behind all this, but it ends up not being. He doesn't show up until I think it was Ironheart a few years later. Turns out Wanda is actually the villain, where, you know, through her grief of losing Vision after the events of Infinity War and Endgame, she just lost it. She lost all hope in the world. She didn't know what to do with herself. So she goes to this spot that Vision apparently picked out for them to start a life together. And she just loses control of her powers and creates this reality where her and Vision are married. They have kids. They live in this nice suburban neighborhood where everybody is friends and everything like that. But turns out that in her creating this reality, she enslaved an entire town to make her reality, her dreams, a reality. And that's a huge twist in this show, which makes Wanda pretty much the villain of this show, which leads into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, where she is actually the villain in that. Now you get kind of thrown through a loop here with the Catherine Hahn character, who ends up being Agatha Harkness, who is also kind of a villain figure in this show. But I think for the purposes of the villain scale, Wanda is the villain of the show. Now, we'll talk about Catherine Hahn's Agnes/Agatha character when we get to the villain scale today, just because it's kind of villain versus villain in here. But for argument's sake, I would say Wanda is the main villain because she enslaved an entire town just to make her dreams with Vision become a reality, and it holding people hostage and not letting them go and sucking more people into this TV alternate reality. It's villainous. And granted, sure, she probably didn't know exactly what she was doing, probably didn't have a lot of control over her powers, but still, she didn't change anything. She kept going. She kept adding more people to it to be enslaved, and anybody that broke out of it, she put right back in it. So she knew what she was doing. So that's why I label her as the villain of the show. But we'll talk about Catherine Hans, of course, because she is a villain-like character moving forward. And this is kind of where it starts. So, looking at the budget for this show, the budget for each episode was reportedly about $25 million per episode, which makes it the most expensive television series in history at the time, beating The Pacific, which had a budget of about $21 million per episode. So at the time, WandaVision per episode was the most expensive show in TV history. I've already kind of went through the synopsis where Wanda was in such grieving over Vision's death that she enslaved an entire town called Westview and holding everybody hostage. So, and we don't really find that out. Well, we kind of get a glimpse of it even in episode 1 where Mr. Hart is choking, and it turns out Wanda did it to shut him up from asking questions. You have what's her name? Kitty from That 70s Show. Mrs. Hart. She was freaking out, begging Wanda to stop, to let him go. And eventually Vision pulls the piece of food out of him. But you could tell that Wanda was behind that. And that's kind of where you get your first glimpse that this doesn't seem as happy as it originally thought. You know, something sinister is going on. And then as the episodes come out, that's when you realize that Wanda did something very, very dark and very villainous, to where she is not an Avenger anymore. She is now a villain. So this is kind of that spark that goes into Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. But so she is the villain. So I've already talked about Wanda a lot here, played by Elizabeth Olsen once again. Vision, played by Paul Bettany once again, of course, resurrected through this alternate reality after his death in Infinity War. And he has no idea what's going on. Eventually, I think it's like episode 4 is when he breaks out of it and he realizes what Wanda does. And there's this big power struggle and clash between him and Wanda. So they get separated the next couple episodes. Eventually, he tries to break out of this and he's torn apart. So Wanda has to suck him back in. But he is a victim, just like everybody else in Westview, from Wanda. Agnes, aka Agatha, played by Catherine Hahn, turns out to be a witch. And we'll talk about her, of course, more in the villain scale, along with Wanda. But Catherine Hahn is such a joy to have in here. And in the first few episodes, with her being Agnes, very enjoyable, very charming, very funny, whimsical, being that charismatic neighbor that likes to be nosy. But she's nosy for a reason, because she's trying to figure out how Wanda enslaved an entire town and did this. So from a witch perspective, she is trying to get answers on how Wanda was able to do it. And she reveals that Wanda is actually the Scarlet Witch, which is her superhero comic book alter ego. Before this, she was only referred to as Wanda. She was never referred to as the Scarlet Witch in the MCU until this moment at the very end of the show, where Agatha reveals that she is the Scarlet Witch, which is pretty cool. Mariko Rambeau, a little Lieutenant Trouble from Captain Marvel, all grown up now. She makes an appearance here. She ends up getting powers as well. I think her comic book name is like Photon or something, where she can manipulate light and things like that. But with her going through the Hex, is what they call it, it like unleashed some power inside of her, and she became a superhero known as Photon. But I don't think they actually call her Photon in the MCU, but that's her comic book name. Maybe eventually they'll call her Photon eventually. I think maybe in the Marvels. I can't remember the Marvels very much, but they might have mentioned her superhero name in that one. Jimmy Woo, played by Randall Park, returns. He was introduced in the Ant-Man part of the MCU. Now he is kind of the Agent Coulson, I guess you could say, in this section of the MCU. He works for the FBI. He is investigating the weird phenomenon going around this Westview town, and that's when he and Monica discover that Wanda is behind this. And then Darcy from the Thor part of the MCU, played by Kat Dennings again. She gets sucked into here. She's the one that realizes what Wanda's doing through the TV, and she's watching each episode on a old school TV. So it's great to see her again. I love Kat Dennings. I love the Darcy character. I wish we get more of her in the future. So a couple of notes here before we get into the categories that we always do: iconic scenes, favorite quotes, and fun facts. I thought it'd be fun to just kind of break down each episode because they kind of pay an homage to the shows that we love. So episode 1 was based on a lot of I Love Lucy, the Dick Van Dyke Show, and Leave It to Beaver. So the black and white was pretty cool. Also in black and white, in episode 2, we get homages to Bewitched, and then I Dream of Genie. Of a Genie, I think is what it is. That one I didn't really watch. Bewitched I watched a little bit growing up. Leave It to Beaver I watched a little bit of I Love Lucy and Dick Van Dyke, but I wasn't a big black and white guy. I think the main black and white show I ever watched growing up was like the Andy Griffith or what's another one? Probably Leave It to Beaver. I think Leave It to Beaver is probably the one I watched the most other than Andy Griffith. Bewitched I watched just because I do like magic and witches and things like that. But yeah, I've seen little bits of most of those shows, except for I Dream of Genie. I never really watched that one. Episode 3 was based on a lot of the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family, which I've watched both of those. Brady Bunch more than the Partridge Family, of course, but great to kind of go back and reminisce on all the shows we used to watch. Episode 4 was mainly based on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which I watched a little bit of. Not a big fan of that one, but I did see episodes of that one growing up. And then episode 5 was based off of Full House, Growing Pains, Family Ties, Step by Step, which I watched all of those. Probably the one I watched the most was Family Ties and Full House. Really liked that one. And then episode 6 was based off Malcolm in the Middle, which we've talked about on the last couple episodes of the podcast. Absolutely love Malcolm in the Middle. That was really cool when episode 6 came out back in 2021, and it was the Malcolm in the Middle version of the WandaVision show. You know, they had a similar tone to the theme song from Malcolm in the Middle. You had the twins talking to the camera like Malcolm does. It was really cool to see them based off off Malcolm in the Middle. It was awesome. Episode 7 was like one of the docu-comedy show style. Modern Family, of course, and The Office. Watched both of those. I love The Office. That was great that they did that kind of style. And then episodes 8 and 9 was just Wanda back in reality. They didn't base it off any show or anything like that. They were back in the real world. But it was cool how they kind of did each decade. So like I Love Lucy was like the 50s, Bewitched 60s, Brady Bunch was the 70s, Mary Tyler Moore Show was the 80s. Then you had Full House, Growing Pains, and all those in the 90s. Malcolm in the Middle, of course, was the early 2000s. And then you get into the 2010s with Modern Family, and The Office. So it was pretty cool how they structured this series with the different decades of show. I wish they would have kept this going and did maybe 2 or 3 more seasons like this, or maybe even do it with a different character where they get sucked into a TV world. But this is a great structure on how they did each of the episodes, at least the first 7, where they based it off of a popular show in that decade. It was really cool. This was also the first, like I said, reveal of the Scarlet Witch character, as well as the idea of chaos magic, which is what Scarlet Witch uses and what she's mainly made of. This chaos magic type of magic. I'm not too familiar with the magic side of the Marvel universe, but I do recognize the term chaos magic, which is just uncontrollable magic and dark magic that parts of the Marvel universe get acquainted with, so to speak. So this was kind of the introduction of that part of the Marvel universe. And then it also sets up Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, of course, as Wanda being the villain in that one, where Doctor Strange has to stop Wanda from destroying the multiverse, trying to get back to her twin boys. So let's look at the iconic scenes. This was a little tougher because we had 9 episodes to go through, so I try to limit it down to 5 nominees, and I'll let you know which one is my most iconic scene. Of course, as a reminder, iconic scenes is when you hear the title WandaVision, what is the scene that pops up the most to you? So here's our nominees. Wanda making dinner for the hearts in black and white, with all the kitchen stuff floating around, and she's blowing up toast, and she's changing the chicken into eggs again because she went too far with her magic. She's all frazzled and everything's just kind of exploding in the kitchen. That was a fun scene to watch. Evan Peters showing up as Pietro, who we thought was Pietro, but ends up being, what was his first name? Was it like Ron Boner or something like that? It was something totally ridiculous. It was when they did that reveal at the end. That was like the Trevor Slattery, Ben Kingsley reveal in Iron Man 3 that I hated, and like the fat Thor in an Endgame that I didn't care for as much as other people did. But that part where they revealed that Evan Peters wasn't Pietro, he was just one of the neighbors in the neighborhood as Ralph Boner. I think that's what it was, Ralph. Ralph Boner. That was the dumbest thing ever. Like, so ridiculous. Didn't need to be in there. But him showing up at the door in, what was it, episode 5, I think it was, at the very end is when he shows up, and it, of course, Evan Peters played Quicksilver, aka Pietro, in the X-Men universe, so they brought him over to kind of like show that the multiverse is real instead of bringing Aaron Taylor Johnson back, which would have made more sense. But it was pretty cool to see Evan Peters back as Quicksilver in here. Another one, It Was Agatha All Along reveal, where we get that, sing along, it was Agatha all along. And she goes, I killed Sparky too. That was a really fun moment in the show with the sing along. Everybody was singing it. It was all over social media and YouTube when that came out. It was really, really cool how they revealed that Agatha was like the villain, so to speak. The Vision versus Vision fight at the end, where our Vision fights Sword's version of Vision. So we get introduced to Sword as well, which is kind of like the intergalactic version of Shield. And that's where Nick Fury is mainly at, is at the Sword space station above Earth's atmosphere. And that's what they built their own version of Vision. So they end up fighting in Westview. It's that all white version of them. And then we have Wanda versus Agatha, which was pretty cool to see all the chaos magic and things like that. And Wanda learning how to use ruins against Agatha and things like that. The finale wasn't great. That was the thing with these Disney shows, specifically Marvel. The finales just didn't land. They had a really big third act problem in these shows where they just didn't stick the landing. It was underwhelming, or it just didn't make sense. A lot of the shows for Marvel, you'll hear me talk about that, where they have a finale problem. They just was lackluster, underwhelming, just not great. But the most iconic scene to me has got to be Agatha All Along. I mean, I can hear it in my head. It was Agatha all along. Like, that sing along was really fun, and Catherine Hahn was so entertaining and comedic and just charismatic when she did that. It was so good. Can't forgive her for killing Sparky though. That's fucked up. Favorite quotes. Try to limit this down again because we had 9 episodes to analyze. A couple of here from Vision. But what is grief but not love persevering? That's probably my favorite one. And then Wanda, welcome home, as he says to her at the end of the first episode. This one from Agatha. Oh, and I killed Sparky too. And then a couple from Wanda. You are my sadness and my hope, but mostly you're my love. Of course, talking to Vision when she finally gives up the hex and has to have everything disappeared and release Westview back to the people. And then also from Wanda, in a real magic act, everything is fake, coming from that episode where they do those fake magic tricks at the auction or whatever the heck that raffle thing is. Favorite quote's probably the one that Vision said, but what is grief but not love persevering? That's a really good life lesson for not just, the Marvel universe, but for our lives as well. And then let's wrap things up with fun facts. So cinematographer Jess Hall used 47 different camera lenses for the 7 time periods covered in WandaVision, many of which were modern lenses, custom modified to keep characteristics of the actual period lenses. Lighting was adjusted to align with the periods being portrayed as well. Tungsten lights were used in the filmings of the 1950s to 1970s era episodes, as they were commonly used in production during that actual period, which is pretty cool. LED lights were used for scenes depicting the modern era. As Hall explained, that was the correct timeline for when this equipment entered the filmmaking vocabulary. So that was pretty cool that he actually incorporated the equipment and techniques that they use in those time periods for those shows. That was really cool. In order to preserve the authenticity of the 50s era sitcom vibes the show was trying to capture, Paul Bettany was painted blue for the scenes shot in black and white rather than maroon, because blue looked better in grayscale, which you can tell a difference that between the maroon scenes and the blue scenes. So that was pretty cool. The series is inspired by various Marvel comic stories, such as The Vision and the Scarlet Witch. This was a 2 series from the 1980s. House of M, which is a pretty popular one. This was a 2005 limited series, and then crossover story where Wanda creates an idyllic alternate reality, which is a lot of this is based off is that House of M series. And then the 2016 series, The Vision, where Vision retires to a suburban life and creates a synthezoid family. I hope I said that right. Producers considered having every episode filmed in front of a live studio audience, but the idea was quickly shot down and limited to just that first episode, which is fitly titled Filmed Before a Live Studio Audience. So that would have been pretty cool if they would have actually filmed this in front of a live audience. But I get it. Probably costs a lot of money and a lot of moving parts. But that was cool that they had at least the first episode was actually a live studio audience like they did back in the day. And then in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, SWORD stands for Sentient Weapon Observation Response Division. But in the comics, it actually stands for Sentient World Observation Response Department. The change refers to observing Wanda and the Vision, who are sentient weapons. However, Spider-Man Far From Home displayed Nick Fury operating in space at a SWORD base. So, a little bit of a SWORD knowledge for all of you not really familiar with the comic books. But I absolutely love WandaVision. Great week-to-week setup, great structure with the different decades through television. I had a lot of fun rewatching this for the podcast, and it was truly, truly enjoyable. I just absolutely love this show. So with that, let's wrap things up like we always do with the rankings, with the MCU ranking, with the villain scale, and then that popcorn rating. Okay, we'll start things off with the MCU ranking for WandaVision. WandaVision is currently sitting at number 22 on the MCU ranking. Looking at what's kind of around it, at 21, Ant-Man, 20, Ant-Man and the Wasp, 19, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, 18, Black Panther, 17, Thunderbolts, 16, Iron Man, and at 15, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Looking at what's around it below, at 23, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which I'm super excited about finally doing on the show. 24, the first Avengers film, and then 25, the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, which we'll get to as well. So sitting at number 22 is WandaVision. I think it is the third highest show on this list. Yep, I got Daredevil up top. I've got Hawkeye right behind it, and then that's when WandaVision comes in. So that is the third best show, I think, in Marvel. The villain scale. Reminder, villain scale, we look at the performance, the costume, and the motivation behind the villain. So like I said, the main villain of this show is Wanda, aka Scarlet Witch. But I'll also mention Agatha Harkness in here as well, because she kind of is presented as a villain in the MCU as well. But we'll focus mainly on Wanda for a second here. So Wanda, costume. I love her costumes throughout all the decades. When she gets into her final Scarlet Witch outfit, that's really awesome. My favorite is probably her Halloween episode with Malcolm in the Middle, with her comic accurate costume. That was pretty cool. I really like that. But I also like her costumes in the 50s and 60s eras with the I Love Lucy and Bewitched. Those are really cool costumes as well. Her motivation, I mean, Vision died right in front of her, and she has so much grief that she just can't control her powers, and she's kind of a victim too in here. But she's also a villain because she doesn't make any effort to fix it until it's too late. But I like the motivation. I like the writing behind how Wanda got to this point and how she reacted and went about this whole kidnapping an entire town. It was I really like the writing in this show. And then the performance by Elizabeth Olsen. She's fantastic. I love her as Wanda. She does a phenomenal job in this show. I think this is my favorite performance of her in the MCU so far. This is her show, and she absolutely nails it. I really, really like her in here. Agnes, aka Agatha Harkness. She is kind of a villain in here, so we'll do kind of a twofer for the villain scale for today's episode. I like her costumes in here as Agnes. Her final Agatha costume is okay. I haven't really seen pics yet of what the comic book looks like of her, but it was very Salem-esque. So not great, but not horrible. I love the Catherine Hahn's performance. She's fantastic. She's whimsical, charismatic. She's the Catherine Hahn that we love. She's funny. Just very, very enthusiastic. I really like her performance. And then her writing was pretty good in here. With the reveal with Agatha all along, and she's singing what she did behind the scenes the entire time. She killed Sparky, and now she's been this witch the entire time, monitoring Wanda to see how she was able to do this and see if she can learn how to do it. With the villain scale, I'm giving 4 Thanos heads to Wanda, since she is pretty much the main villain of the show. And then I'm giving Agatha 3 Thanos heads because not vibing with the costume as much, and she wasn't really like the main villain, so I can't really give it more than 3. But Wanda, I'm giving 4. I thought about 5, but I was like, not quite on, the Thanos, Mysterio, Vulture level of the scale, but she's right there. So I gave her 4 Thanos heads and Agatha 3 Thanos heads. And then lastly, but certainly not least, the popcorn rating. I'm giving this 5 popcorn buckets. There can be an argument made for gold. There can be an argument made for 4 popcorns because of the finale. But that's what really holds it to 5 for me, is the finale. If the finale would have been much better, this would easily be a gold popcorn bucket show. But I'm going to stick to 5 because the rest of the show up to that finale is fantastic. It's entertaining. The fact that they used all the techniques and equipment from those eras to bring them to life. They looked like the shows that they were paying homage to. I just love the structure of the week to week, all the theories and everything going around it. I love the way that they went through each decade of shows and used those shows as representations of what Wanda went through. Like, these were shows that she watched as a kid. Her dad in that one scene had that briefcase full of movies, and you can see Dick Van Dyke and Malcolm in the Middle in there. It was really cool that these were actual shows that she watched as a kid, and she used that to create this alternate world for herself. It was really, really cool. So 5 popcorn buckets for WandaVision. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Marvel episode. Next week, we will do, I believe it's the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So another Disney Plus show we'll get to. And then eventually we'll get into like a mixture of movies and series as we get through the phase 4 and phase 5 stuff. But WandaVision was today. Falcon and Winter Soldier will be next week. Also, the Mario review episode will finally come out this weekend. We'll also do a review episode on the Michael Jackson film, which is out today. I'll be seeing that this weekend, so there'll be a couple of review episodes coming out in the next few days, and then, of course, we'll get to the Marvel episode next week as well. And then we'll start getting into more of those events, too, as we find gaps in there. It's going to be tough now with May starting up, and from May to, like, August, there's, like, a new movie every week to review, so we'll find spots to do all those events that we revealed at the beginning of the year as well. So a lot of content coming. Also, check out the End Zone Report for all you NFL nuts out there. I released the first episode of the season, of the 2026 season, the other day on predictions of the draft. Now the draft's going on. We'll do a recap of the draft episode next week as well. and then it'll be a little break before we release another episode. But if you are a football fan, check out Quantum Podcasts, the End Zone Report for all your football wants and desires. Also, check out the Quantum Flash gaming channel. A lot of stuff to check out, a lot of content from me. And then also check out socials, subscribe, follow, helps out the show a lot. Thank you everyone who has followed the show all these years. It's been a blast, and I'm going to keep pumping content out there for you guys. Having a blast doing this. And then check out the website, cinematic-reviews.com. Create a profile on there, share the world, your ratings of these movies, your thoughts. It's a great interactive website for everybody to do things on. So check that out as well. So with that, have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you all next time on the show.